This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show in Greece, where more than 60% of voters Sunday rejected a bailout deal proposed by international creditors that demanded harsh austerity measures like pension cuts and tax increases, but included no debt relief. This is voter Christian Vlachaki, who joined thousands to celebrate in the streets of Athens.
This is our first step to our next battle. Now it truly starts. I do not think that everything will suddenly be perfect, but it is a first step in making fear go away. Up until now, they were scaring us. Now we overcome this and move to the next stage. Slowly, we will get to the place that we deserve to be.
Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras responded to Sunday's resounding no vote, saying Greeks had proved that, quote, democracy won't be blackmailed.
Today, considering last week's very difficult circumstances, you made a very brave choice. However, I am fully aware that the mandate here is not a mandate to break with Europe, but a mandate to strengthen our negotiation position, to seek a viable solution. This time, the issue of debt will also be on the negotiating table.
Tsipras says debt talks will resume immediately with a new negotiating team. This follows a surprise resignation by Greece's finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, who'd urged a no vote on the referendum and over the weekend had accused Greece's European creditors of terrorism. Today, he wrote on his blog he'd been, quote, made aware of a certain preference by some Eurogroup participants and assorted partners for my absence from its meetings, an idea that the Prime Minister judged to be potentially helpful to him in reaching an agreement, Varoufakis wrote. He added, quote, I consider it my duty to help Alexis Tsipras exploit, as he sees fit, the capital that the Greek people granted us through yesterday's referendum, and I shall wear the creditors' loathing with pride. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is meeting today with French President François Hollande to assess the situation, and an emergency European Union summit meeting is set for Tuesday. For more, we're joined by Kostas Paniatakis. He is author of Remaking Scarcity, From Capitalist Inefficiency to Economic Democracy, professor of sociology at New York City's College of Technology at CUNY. He's just returned from Greece. Welcome back to Democracy Now! We spoke to you last week just before the vote. The resounding no vote, did it surprise you?
Yeah, I think it surprised everybody, including the government. All the polls before the the vote suggested that it was very close. So I think that was a great victory for democracy in Greece. People were under immense psychological pressure from the media that were threatening them with nightmare scenarios, from workplaces where many business owners were threatening their workers that if no prevailed, they would lose their jobs, and from the European partners who basically were saying that a no vote would mean exit from the Eurozone. So it's a very important result. It's a hopeful development. It will not end the austerity, even if there is an agreement, but it creates a better environment for anti-austerity forces to keep fighting. Well,
what does it mean today?
Well, the situation in Greece is still very difficult. It is urgent because the banks are closed, so the normality in the banking system has to be restored. As long as it is not restored, it basically will have a bad effect on the economy, and this creates lots of pressure, of course, on the Greek government, and it is consistent with the strategy of economic strangulation that the Europeans have used ever since the election of this new anti-austerity government.
Greece's finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, resigned today. He said his country's resounding no vote means it can now ask for a fair deal from its international partners.
We will invite them one by one to find common ground. For example, we will see positively the fact that the International Monetary Fund a few days ago, in its honor, published a report which confirms that our debt needs restructuring.
So that is was the finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis. He surprised many by resigning. He posted on his blog that he was resigning because he'd been made aware of a certain preference by some Eurogroup participants and assorted partners for my absence from its meetings. He said an idea the Prime Minister judged to be potentially helpful. What about this?
Well, there had been some talk about Varoufakis. I mean, he used to be the head of the negotiating team with the Europeans as finance minister, and he had been replaced from that role a few months ago because he was insistent on a deal that is viable. He's not a sort of long-term politician, so he doesn't want to just he didn't want to just achieve an agreement that would last a few months and would continue this kind of pattern of agreements that are made and have to be reconsidered and revisited a few months later. So that made him very, very unpopular with his partners, who are the more traditional politicians. Perhaps it was partly a stylistic issue as well. You know, he wasn't, you know, finance ministers in the Eurozone are usually very sort of gray, sort of technocratic figures. So perhaps his style was commented on, but I think there was substantial differences, and he basically held for his position, which was substantially right.
The older people tended to vote yes. The younger people overwhelmingly voted no. Older people, pensioners, afraid for their economic stability.
Yes, I mean, this is in line with electoral results, including the electoral result back in January. There was a lot of a terror campaign in the media that never sort of looked very closely in the past about the sufferings of ordinary people. They were focusing relentlessly on the queues of pensioners trying to collect their pensions from the banks, and they created a kind of climate of fear. But for many young people, for most Greeks, they have lost so much already that they fear they have nothing more to lose.
Last week, economist Thomas Piketty, author of Capital in the 21st Century, was interviewed in the German newspaper Die Zeit, saying, quote, "When I hear the Germans say they maintain a very moral stance about debt and strongly believe that debts must be repaid, then I think, what a huge joke. Germany's the country that's never repaid its debts. It has no standing to lecture other nations." In your last thoughts, your response, 30 seconds.
I think there is a lot of hypocrisy on the part of many European officials. The head of the European Commission was Prime Minister of Luxembourg, that thrived as a tax haven, that undercut the tax receipts of other European countries, and other countries like the Netherlands have also served as a tax haven, and these are countries that are oftentimes hardliners, and they point the finger to Greece, and they forget that, yes, there may be issues in Greece, there is corruption, but oftentimes the corruptors are European companies, notably German ones.
Professor Kostas Panayiotakis, thanks so much for being with us, author of Remaking Scarcity, From Capitalist Inefficiency to Economic Democracy. He's a professor of CUNY, City University of New York, here in the city.